The classroom buzzed with the usual chaos of a late Friday afternoon at Crestwood High, a sprawling school nestled in the heart of a small town where everyone knew everyone, except for the new girl, Lila Harper. She sat quietly at her desk in the back corner of room 204, her long chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall, catching the sunlight that streamed through the smudged windows. Lila was an enigma to her classmates, having arrived just 2 weeks ago from a city nobody could quite place. Her soft-spoken demeanor and tendency to keep to herself made her an easy target in a school where conformity was currency. She wasn't flashy like the cheerleaders or loud like the jocks, she was just there, her nose buried in a worn sketchbook, her pencil moving in delicate strokes. That Friday, though, the air felt different, heavier, charged with an unspoken tension. The teacher, Mrs. Callahan, had stepped out to take a call, leaving the class under the flimsy supervision of a substitute aide who was more interested in her phone than the students. That's when it started. Kaylee Monroe, the undisputed queen bee of Crestwood's junior class, leaned back in her chair, her perfectly manicured nails tapping rhythmically on her desk. Her clique, Chloe, Mia, and Tara, giggled in unison. Their eyes locked on Lila like hawks circling prey. Kaylee's lips curled into a smirk as she whispered something to Chloe, who stifled a laugh and passed a pair of silver scissors under the desk. The plan had been brewing all week, sparked by a petty grudge. Lila had unknowingly sat in Kaylee's usual spot in the cafeteria on her first day, an act Kaylee interpreted as a challenge to her social throne. She thinks she's better than us, Kaylee had hissed to her friends, her voice dripping with venom. Let's teach her a lesson. The class was a powder keg, and the scissors were the match. Lila didn't notice the whispers or the glint of metal as Chloe slipped behind her, moving with the stealth of a predator. The room grew quieter, as if the other students sensed something was about to happen. Some looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Others leaned forward, eager for the drama. Chloe's hand moved quickly, snipping a thick lock of Lila's hair before she could react. The chestnut strand fell to the floor like a discarded ribbon, and a collective gasp rippled through the room. Lila's hand flew to her head, her fingers trembling as she touched the jagged edge where her hair had been cut. Her wide, hazel eyes met Chloe's, who stood there grinning, holding the lock triumphantly. Oops, Chloe said, her voice mockingly sweet. Kaylee burst into laughter, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Looks like the new girl needed a trim, she taunted, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. Mia and Tara joined in, their laughter sharp and cruel, echoing off the walls. Lila's face flushed crimson, her hands clenching into fists as she fought back tears. The other students shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others staring at the floor. Nobody moved to help her. Nobody dared. Lila's voice was barely a whisper as she said, "Why would you do that?" But her words were drowned out by Kaylee's next barb. "Maybe now you'll learn to stay in your lane, new girl." The aide finally looked up from her phone, confused, but before she could intervene, Lila grabbed her sketchbook and bolted from the room, her uneven hair trailing behind her like a wounded flag. The bell rang moments later, and the students spilled into the hallway, buzzing with gossip about what had just happened. Kaylee and her crew strutted out, basking in their victory, while the severed lock of hair lay forgotten on the classroom floor. By Monday, the incident was the talk of Crestwood High. Lila didn't show up to school, and the rumor mill churned relentlessly. Some said she'd moved away in shame, others claimed she was planning to sue the school. Kaylee and her friends leaned into the attention, retelling the story with exaggerated flair, painting Lila as a weirdo who couldn't handle a joke. But beneath their bravado, there was an undercurrent of unease. The principal, Mr. Dawson, had called Kaylee, Chloe, Mia, and Tara into his office that morning, his face stern as he warned them about consequences if Lila's parents pressed charges. "You're lucky she hasn't reported this yet," he said, his voice low and serious. Kaylee rolled her eyes, but Chloe fidgeted nervously, her bravado faltering. Meanwhile, Lila sat at home, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The jagged cut was impossible to hide, a glaring reminder of her humiliation. Her mother, a soft-spoken woman who worked double shifts at the local diner, had been furious when she saw Lila's hair. "We're going to the principal," she'd said, but Lila begged her not to. "It'll only make it worse," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. Instead, she spent the weekend sketching, her pencil flying across the pages of her sketchbook. creating intricate drawings of warriors and mythical creatures, their eyes fierce and unyielding. Each stroke was a release, a way to channel the pain she couldn't voice. By Sunday night, she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. Lila Harper was going to fight back, but not in the way anyone expected. Tuesday morning arrived, and the school was abuzz with anticipation. Word had spread that Lila was returning, and the hallways were thick with whispers as students craned their necks to catch a glimpse of her. When she walked through the front doors, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Her hair, once her most striking feature, was gone, replaced by a bold, asymmetrical bob that framed her face with sharp, deliberate edges. She'd cut it herself, turning the jagged hack job into something fierce and intentional. She wore a black leather jacket over a simple white tee, her usual timid posture replaced by a quiet confidence that made people stare. Her sketchbook was tucked under her arm, but there was something different about it now. A sleek black cover with a silver emblem embossed on the front, one nobody recognized. Kaylee, standing by her locker with her clique, froze when she saw Lila. What's she trying to pull? She muttered, but her voice lacked its usual bite. Chloe looked uneasy, her eyes darting between Lila and the crowd. Lila didn't acknowledge them as she walked to her locker, her steps measured and calm. The whispers grew louder, a mix of awe and curiosity. Did you see her hair? One girl murmured. She looks different, said another. In room 204, the atmosphere was electric as Lila took her seat at the back. Mrs. Callahan, back from her absence, gave her a sympathetic glance but said nothing about the incident. The lesson began, but nobody was paying attention. All eyes were on Lila, waiting for her to cry, to lash out, to do something. But Lila just opened her sketchbook and started drawing, her expression unreadable. The real shock came at lunch. The cafeteria was the heart of Crestwood's social hierarchy, where Kaylee and her crew held court at the center table, their laughter a daily reminder of their dominance. Lila usually ate alone in the courtyard, but today, she walked straight into the cafeteria, her tray in hand, and headed for a table near the edge. The room quieted as she sat down, not with her usual solitude, but with two other students, Jaden, a quiet kid who was a math prodigy, and Sarah, a goth girl who'd been ostracized for her love of obscure bands. The three of them didn't speak much, but their presence together was enough to raise eyebrows. Kaylee, watching from her throne, felt a prickle of unease. Who does she think she is? She hissed to Chloe, who shrugged nervously. Then, Lila did something nobody expected. She stood up, walked to the center of the cafeteria, and climbed onto an empty table. The room fell silent, forks hovering midair. Lila opened her sketchbook and held up a single page, a stunning, intricate drawing of a phoenix rising from flames, its wings spread wide. This is for anyone who's ever been made to feel small, she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the silence. You don't have to hide. You don't have to break. You can rise. She tore the page from her sketchbook and pinned it to the cafeteria bulletin board, where flyers for prom and football games usually reigned supreme. The room erupted in murmurs, some students clapping hesitantly, others staring in disbelief. Kaylee's face burned with rage, but for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. What happened next was nothing short of a revolution. Lila's drawing became a symbol, a quiet rebellion that spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, other students started pinning their own creations to the bulletin board, poems, sketches, even handwritten notes about their own struggles. Jaden shared a complex equation he'd been too shy to present in math club, earning applause from his peers. Sarah performed an original song at the talent show, her voice raw and haunting, silencing the usual snickers. Lila, Jaden, and Sarah became an unlikely trio, their table in the cafeteria growing as other outcasts joined them, kids who'd been ignored or mocked for being different. They called themselves the Phoenixes, a nod to Lila's drawing, and their quiet defiance began to chip away at Kaylee's empire. The bullies' taunts lost their sting as more students found the courage to speak up. Kaylee tried to retaliate, spreading rumors about Lila, but they fell flat. The school was changing, and Lila's act of standing up had lit a spark nobody could extinguish. Even Mrs. Callahan noticed, pulling Lila aside one day to say, "I don't know what you did, but you've given this place something it's been missing for a long time, hope." The climax came at the spring assembly, a mandatory event where the school celebrated its athletes and prom court. Kaylee was set to be crowned junior prom queen, her victory a foregone conclusion. but when the principal announced a new award for Student Impact, the room went silent as Lila's name was called. She walked to the stage, her bob gleaming under the auditorium lights, and accepted a small plaque with the phoenix emblem she'd designed. The applause started slowly, then grew into a roar. Led by the phoenixes and the students who'd found their voices because of her. Kaylee's smile faltered as she clapped politely, her crown suddenly feeling heavy. Lila didn't gloat, she didn't need to. Her victory wasn't about tearing others down, it was about lifting herself and others up. Backstage, she found a note slipped into her sketchbook. "You're stronger than you know. Keep rising. Mrs. C." Lila smiled, tucking the note away, and returned to her friends, who greeted her with high fives and laughter. The story of Lila Harper didn't end with the assembly. The Phoenixes grew into a school-wide movement, organizing art showcases, open mic nights, and even a peer support group for students struggling with bullying. Lila's sketchbook, once a private refuge, became a shared canvas where others added their own stories. Kaylee and her clique faded into the background, their influence waning as the school embraced a new kind of strength, one rooted in kindness and courage. Lila never sought revenge, but she'd won something far greater, a community that saw her for who she was. Years later, long after graduation, Crestwood High still had a Phoenix Wall in the cafeteria, where students pinned their dreams and fears, a testament to the girl who turned pain into power. And Lila? She went on to study art, her work featured in galleries, each piece carrying the same fierce spirit that had changed a school. Her story is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can rise, reshape our pain, and inspire others to do the same.